August 7, 1942, at 02:14 hours, in the black silence before dawn, the first wave of United States Marines began wading ashore on a strip of beach forever etched into history, Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands. They carried the standard weapons of the day: M1 Garand rifles, Browning automatic rifles, BARs, Thompson submachine guns. But among those weapons was something unusual, something that would catch the Japanese defenders completely off guard, not through technological complexity but through brutal, immediate efficiency. Hidden in the hands of select Marines was the Winchester Model 12 shotgun, a pump-action weapon originally designed for hunting, but now repurposed and transformed into one of the most devastating tools of close combat ever fielded in modern warfare. The simplicity of the weapon was its genius. The Japanese defenders on Guadalcanal had prepared for a traditional, rigid form of warfare. They trained endlessly for disciplined rifle combat at a distance, and more crucially, for the ultimate expression of their warrior code, the bayonet charge and close-in sword fighting, convinced their spiritual superiority and fanatical conviction would overwhelm American troops in hand-to-hand combat. What they had not prepared for, what their doctrine had never accounted for, was the brutal, anarchic reality of the American shotgun. This was a weapon that could fire as fast as a man could cycle the pump action, defying the methodical pace of the bolt-action Arisaka rifle. The mechanical simplicity of the Model 12, combined with its devastating spread of buckshot, would quickly and violently unravel Japanese tactical doctrine in the jungles, caves, and terrifying night fighting that defined the Pacific War. The raw numbers alone painted a picture of overwhelming force at short range. Each shell loaded into the Model 12 held 9 .33 caliber pellets of double-aught buckshot. This meant that a Marine, firing 6 rounds in a concentrated 3-second burst, a feat entirely possible with the smooth pump action, could unleash 54 projectiles, saturating a target area with lethal, inescapable firepower faster than any single Japanese soldier could dream of achieving. For the 2,200 Japanese defenders on Guadalcanal, this was not only a weapon they had never expected to face, but one so devastatingly effective that its use in combat had drawn a formal, diplomatic protest during the previous World War. The Germans had filed that protest in 1918, claiming that American shotguns violated the Hague Convention because they caused unnecessary suffering. Their protest went so far as to threaten the execution of any captured U.S. soldier found carrying the weapon. The United States, recognizing the immense tactical value of the shotgun, had summarily dismissed the protest, warning that if a single American was executed for carrying the Model 12, immediate and severe reprisals would follow. No Americans were ever executed, and the shotgun remained in service, a testament to American pragmatism over traditional military formality. By the time World War II erupted, the Winchester Model 12 trench gun had been refined for military service. It featured a shortened 20-inch barrel for maneuverability in confined spaces, a ventilated heat shield to protect the user's hand during rapid fire, and a bayonet lug for the inevitable moments when reloading was not an option. But its most critical feature was its continued ability to slam fire. This meant a Marine could hold the trigger down continuously and simply pump the action as fast as humanly possible, firing shell after shell in a near-continuous roar of destruction. For the Japanese, whose entire tactical reliance was built on the shock and terror of night fighting and disciplined, close-in bayonet charges, this rapid-fire, wide-pattern weapon was an absolute nightmare. Japanese military manuals had taught that Americans were weak in close combat and dependent on their long-range firepower and heavy artillery. Their doctrine called for night infiltration, surprise attacks, and a belief that spiritual superiority would triumph over Western materialism. Early victories across Asia seemed to validate this deeply held belief. But when they met American Marines carrying shotguns in the choking, claustrophobic jungle darkness of Guadalcanal, those fragile assumptions collapsed instantly. The definitive, bloody test of the shotgun's close combat superiority came just 2 weeks after the landing, during the Battle of the Tenarue River on August 21, 1942. Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki led nearly 1,000 Japanese soldiers in a fanatical night assault across a narrow sandbar, intending to smash through the Marine perimeter guarding Henderson Field. It was exactly the kind of close-quarters fighting the Japanese doctrine glorified. But awaiting them were Marines backed by machine guns, artillery, and, most lethally, shotgun-armed riflemen positioned in the shadows. As the Japanese surged forward, they were met with a storm of fire. Garrons and bars tore into the masses, but in the deadly, confusing, close-in fighting along the riverbank, the Winchester Model 12 came into its terrifying own. At ranges of 20 yards or less, a single shotgun blast ripped devastating holes through the attacking formation, often tearing through multiple attackers at once due to the dense concentration of the charge. Slam-firing Marines essentially turned their weapons into rapid-fire, man-portable cannons. When dawn finally broke, the sandbar was a horrifying tableau, literally littered with bodies. Of the 916 Japanese soldiers who began the charge, nearly 800 lay dead. The effectiveness of the shotgun extended beyond its sheer killing power into the realm of psychological warfare. In the absolute blackness of the jungle night, the rhythmic, sharp metallic cha-chunk of a pump-action cycling, the unmistakable sound of a shell being loaded into the chamber sent shivers down the spines of Japanese infiltrators. Marines learned to use the weapon in ways that rifles simply could not match. On night patrols, the shotgun became the weapon of the pointman, the first to meet the enemy, delivering an immediate and devastating cone of fire at the first sign of an ambush. In defensive perimeters, Marines loaded their shotguns and waited in the darkness. When Japanese infiltrators attempted to crawl silently toward the lines with bayonets and grenades, one deafening blast of buckshot ended the attack instantly, leaving no time for a scream or a counterattack. As the war dragged on into the brutal campaigns of 1943 and 1944, the shotgun proved itself indispensable. In the choked, steaming jungles of New Georgia, Marines ensured their point men carried the Winchester Model 12 specifically to counter the endemic threat of ambushes. A single blast could break up a hidden Japanese patrol before it even had a chance to strike. At night, shotgun-armed Marines were stationed in overlapping fields of fire, turning what the Japanese intended as stealth infiltration attempts into guaranteed suicide missions. The weapon also became a crucial tool for jungle lane shooting. Marines would fire down narrow trails or into thick vegetation, where Japanese soldiers were suspected of hiding. The spread of buckshot, unlike a single rifle projectile, tore through foliage and had a high probability of hitting hidden targets, often forcing the enemy to break cover. But perhaps the most terrifying and tactically significant use of the Model 12 came in cave and bunker warfare. Starting at Tarawa in November 1943 and reaching its brutal, desperate peak at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, the Japanese turned entire islands into fortresses of rock, coral, and concrete. Marines were forced to crawl into caves, claw their way up ridges, and fight enemies hidden in dark, confined chambers. Here, the Model 12 was utterly unmatched. Marines quickly developed the ingenious technique of firing into cave mouths, deliberately letting the buckshot ricochet violently off the walls and ceilings, creating a deadly, unpredictable storm of metal inside the confined spaces. Survivors described the noise as horrifying. The ricocheting pellets whined and screamed in every direction, making it seem like death was coming from all around, even when the initial blast didn't kill outright. This overwhelming psychological terror often forced Japanese soldiers to abandon their fortified positions in confusion. On Saipan in July 1944, during the largest Japanese banzai charge of the entire war, thousands of Japanese soldiers hurled themselves at the American lines. While machine guns and artillery inflicted the bulk of the casualties, the chaos of the desperate, close-in fighting saw shotgun-armed Marines holding the line in critical moments. Their ability to unleash dense clouds of lead into charging, screaming soldiers made the difference in sectors where the enemy momentarily broke through the main line. On Iwo Jima, the shotgun became a vital component of the blowtorch and corkscrew tactics used to clear fortifications. Flamethrowers provided fire and smoke, demolition charges sealed tunnels, and shotguns delivered the killing blow inside the confined spaces. Marines even refined their technique, mastering skip shooting, deliberately bouncing buckshot off tunnel walls to hit enemies hiding around a corner or in a side passage without having to expose themselves. Despite its incredible effectiveness in these specialized roles, the Model 12 was never truly mass-issued. Only about 61,000 were produced during the war, a tiny number compared to the millions of M1 rifles. They were carefully distributed to the units most likely to need their specialized close-range power: Marine rifle companies, Army assault teams, Navy landing parties, and even Air Force guards defending remote airfields. Ammunition, however, was produced in vast quantity, including standard buckshot, heavy solid slugs for longer-range work against light vehicles or barricades, and smaller birdshot for clearing vegetation. For the Marines who carried them, the Model 12 was a weapon of choice. Many swore by the confidence it gave them at night, knowing that if the Japanese infiltrated their line, they had the ultimate, immediate, and overwhelming weapon waiting. The Japanese, for their part, never found a real counter. They experimented with crude body armor made from woven wood or bamboo, but it was too heavy, awkward, and largely ineffective against the power of the buckshot. Their only true defense remained to avoid getting close, which directly contradicted their entire, religiously held, tactical doctrine. The story of the Model 12 is a testament not just to hardware, but to the American approach to warfare: pragmatic, adaptable, and fundamentally willing to use any tool that worked, regardless of tradition or diplomatic protest. Where other armies might cling to established methods, the Marines embraced innovation. They didn't wait for top-down doctrine. They experimented in the field, learned what worked through brutal trial and error, and rapidly passed those techniques along. Skip shooting, mixed ammunition loads, and shotgun assault teams were not invented in a laboratory. They were born in the steaming jungles and dark caves of the Pacific by Marines desperately trying to survive. By war's end, the shotgun had carved out a fearsome reputation. It was never the main weapon, but in the specific, brutal environments of the Pacific Island campaigns, it was irreplaceable. In night fighting, jungle patrols, bunker assaults, and desperate last stands, the Winchester Model 12 gave American forces a weapon that shattered Japanese tactical assumptions. Its legacy lived on, serving in Korea and Vietnam, where its immediate, overwhelming close-range firepower was utilized for jungle patrols and, crucially, for tunnel fighting, echoing the cave-clearing days of World War II. The shotgun, simple yet devastating, proved that American forces could adapt faster, innovate smarter, and fight with overwhelming firepower at every range, a brutal contradiction to the Japanese belief system that defined the Pacific conflict.